Now, speaking of spring game learnings from this past Saturday, I want to start in Gainesville, Florida, because I went on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday, and I talked with him a little bit about some of these SEC spring games, and Florida's one that we mentioned, and I said this. I was like, I really believe that I'm probably one of the last people on this branch, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm not leaving Florida for dead. The over-under win total, call it what you want to. Last year, call it what you want to. Say what you want about Billy Napier and the temperature of his seat or whatever. I think Florida is in a lot better position to be successful than folks want to believe. Now, the schedule was the Hunger Games, so we'll talk about that when it comes time to talk about that. But from the spring game itself, it is very obvious this offense is going to run through Trey Wilson. You might know him as Eugene Wilson. I call him Trey Wilson. Bottom line, get number 3 of the football is pretty much how they're going to operate this upcoming season. He had 11 targets in the spring football game. Spring games, more often than not, are you get the starters a little bit of burn, get them a couple targets, get them out of the game, evaluate your depth. Trey Wilson on what would have been for most places a light work kind of day. He got 11 targets, over 100 yards receiving, caught a long touchdown, got you fired up if you're a Gator fan. That's important in the SEC. You got to have a fastball. You got to have some explosivity offensively, something that I don't think Florida's really had a ton of in the last couple of seasons outside of Anthony Richardson, to have a real playmaker on the outside like a Trey Wilson. Ricky Pearsall was great last year. Do they have somebody else to go with Trey Wilson to maximize Trey Wilson's abilities? Because if you can just key on number 3, that might, not age as well as you would like it to in Gainesville in terms of your offensive game plan. Footnote for you from the Florida spring game, I think the defense looks improved. And I think Florida fans probably feel a lot like Rod Wave. Your heart been broke so many times, you don't know exactly what to believe. You're like, I don't want to be optimistic about our defense, JD. I don't want to believe something that's going to end up breaking my heart when we play games in October. I hear you, but I think when you look at that spring game, it's okay to feel some optimism. It's okay to be excited about your young dog and Pup Howard transferring over from South Carolina and having a pretty decent spring game and having a tied or a lead tackle number that tied for the high of the game with 6. So all in all, they'll be better personnel-wise. If you're a Florida fan, excuse me, if you're a Florida fan, I think it's okay to draw some optimism from that. Let's stay in the SEC. Georgia, the Death Star out there in Athens is fully operational. We are more than fine pounding this drum for the entirety of this spring and all the way into the fall, because I'm telling you right now, from a roster perspective, from an experience perspective, there is not a better team in America than the Georgia Bulldogs. It's spring. That's a pretty definitive statement to make, but I think the spring game, did the offense look incredible? No, but I think the roster overall provided enough to hold you over to get you excited for the fall. Going back to my point, the Death Star that is the Georgia roster is operational. That defense, they lose some production for sure, but those young bucks, man, C.J. Allen being one of them, he's going to be very good in Athens for a very long time, as long as he wears that G on his helmet. The offense is the big thing I want to focus on. Very obvious what Trevor Etienne brings to the table here. A little bit of a burst out of the backfield, both running and catching the football. Carson Beck has some more tools to throw the ball to. Colby Young, transfer wide receiver from Miami. They threw him a 50-50 ball. He went up and got it. It was a thing of beauty. Got the crowd fired up. Dominic Lovett looks like he's going to be wide receiver 1 for them in terms of production. You lose Ladd McConkey. You lose Brock Bowers. Dom Lovett now being able to build on what he did last year in terms of understanding of the offense, chemistry with Carson Beck. That's going to pay off. He had a massive spring game, had over 100 yards receiving, and had a touchdown catch in the back corner where he pinned it against the defender with one hand. They both ran into the fence. It looked very painful, but it tied the game up. It was clutch. It was a dime from Carson Beck, and Dom Lovett is a name that I think a lot of fans in Athens are getting fired up about right now. Very, very complete is Georgia as we sit here in the spring. Speaking of complete, man, Ohio State defensively, they're very complete. We're going to talk about the quarterback room a little bit later in the show, but that Buckeye defense, man, you already brought back most of the main characters from that unit that was top 10, top 5 in the country a season ago. JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer up front, they're trench monsters. Davison Igbenosum is just, a definition of what a modern college football corner is supposed to look like with how lanky he is. You add in the best player from the transfer portal, Caleb Downs from Alabama. If you were trying to eval the offense and trying to eval the quarterback position, it's a tough day to do so. 1, because the wind was bad, but 2, that secondary pretty much put a lid on things the whole day and said we're not allowing any big plays. We're not allowing any highlight plays outside of, I guess, Emeka Egbuka having a nice little one-handed catch. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is they forced check down after check down after check down, and that was pretty much the story of the day if you were watching the first team offense. So all I'm trying to say here is they're going to be elite yet again. So you can bank on that Ohio State defense. If it takes a while for the quarterback position to solidify, you're in good shape on defense holding it down on that side of the football. Miami, the Cam Ward era has begun. And if you were trying to temper expectations, it was a tough day for you because Cam Ward went 19 for 24, over 3 bills, and 3 touchdowns. He is verifiably an upgrade for you at the quarterback position. That's not me dunking on TVD. I'm just trying to tell you how it is right here. He is a better quarterback for you than you've had ever in the Mario Cristobal era in Coral Gables. So what does that mean? Well, it means if you were supposed to, I say supposed to, 7-5 last year, really should have been 8-4. It is what it is. If you're taking these steps as a football team, you now have a quarterback to equip you to take that next step. Now, he still has to do it. I thought there were a couple of times there where he made plays off schedule with, the flip pass, kind of shovel passing it when he's in pressure. Makes you a little bit nervous that you're ad-libbing that way during a spring game. But when he was on time and playing within the structure of this offense, he was dialed in. He had a day and a half when it came to what he did statistically. Talking about upgrades, too, worth noting, last year Miami had a 3.5% interception rate. That means of all the passes they threw, 3.5% of those ended in an INT. That's good for 106th in the country. Cam Ward, much better when it comes to taking care of the football, throwing it downfield. Taking care of those fumbles, gotta alleviate that, but he's much better in that department. He threw for over 300, as I mentioned. Miami averaged 250 pass yards a game. Not bad, but again, Cam Ward, he is the upgrade in every single sense of the word. Good to see that translate during the spring game. Got to happen during the practice days before it happens on game day. So Miami, it's happening during the practice days. So far, so good. One more team to touch on here, Alabama. The Kalen DeBoer edge, I think, is going to be physical. People, Nick Saban kind of had a brand of his own that he brought to the table in Tuscaloosa. They were smash mouth. They were push you around. They had obviously some really good quarterbacks there as well during Nick Saban's time. But I think the concern was Kalen DeBoer arrives in Tuscaloosa. He's known for throwing the football around the yard. Are we still going to be physical? Never mind that they won the Joe Moore Award last year at Washington for the best offensive line in the country. Are we still going to have that Bama edge to ourselves? Well, I think the thing that we can take away from the spring game is it's there if you want it. And based on how they ran the football, it's going to be there in the fall. They are legitimately 3 deep at running back. Between Jam Miller, who won A-Day MVP, and Justice Haynes, who was built like a truck and who we talked to Coach Kalen DeBoer about, and Richard Young, the young buck. All 3 of those cats, I think, can tote the mail for you at any given time during the course of this season. And being that deep at running back in the SEC is a non-negotiable if you want to play meaningful games well into December and obviously in the college football playoff. And if you want to win the SEC again, Kalen DeBoer's first year out there. So, again, spring football, it's for taking a temperature, trying to gauge the symptoms. We're not trying to diagnose anything, just kind of get a symptom, figure out what you are in the spring and how that's going to translate when we get to the fall. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.